Welcome to Global Perspectives. What in the world is happening to our planet? For insights, we turn to General Stephen Cheney, the CEO of the American Security Project in Washington, D.C.
Global Perspectives with Pulitzer Prize-winning commentator John Bercia.
Welcome to the show, Steve.
John, I'm glad to be back.
Glad you're here, and I hope you can sort out some of these problems for us. Everywhere we look in the world, it seems there's a crisis, and each one seems to be getting bigger. People are saying we're living in the most dangerous time we've ever had in the history of the world. Is it that grim, or is there a prospect of fixing some of these?
You know, John, I'm an optimist. And you and I have been around long enough to have been through some pretty dire times. You remember Vietnam War, the Cold War, the Soviet Union, the nuclear weapons business. And, take today, for instance, after New START, we're down to 1,550 deployed nuclear weapons per country between Russia and ourselves, which is a dramatic reduction over 30, 40 years ago when we had 20,000. So if you want to put it in that kind of level of risk, if you will, that's been dramatically reduced. That said, now you see what's going on with Russia and Putin, and now the stakes are starting to encroach a little bit on nuclear weapons. That's very scary to me, and that has not happened now of this type of nature for decades. So when that comes into the perspective, you kind of go, ooh, maybe these are tough times. But even then, when you look at the Middle East and the turmoil that's going on with Iraq, Syria, ISIS, Al-Qaeda, there's actually been progress made on that issue, and pretty good progress, despite maybe some consternation between administrations, from Obama to Trump. A lot of the good policies have been carried through. So even though it's not characterized from that perspective by the incumbent administration, nonetheless, there are some positive sides to this. So I don't want to paint a totally negative picture of the whole world situation. Lots of threats out there. Long term, we talk at ASP about climate change. And the ice cap this past year is the smallest it's ever been over the winter. Smallest it's ever been. 16 of the hottest 17 years on record were the last 16. The hottest year on record, 2016. Before that, 15. Before that, 14. You can see what's happening here. So we're melting the earth. We're literally. Now there is a real risk problem.
And it seems to me that the debate should focus on what is actually happening. It doesn't have to be, climate warming or climate cooling, but climate change is there, and however you want to describe it, and it seems to be getting worse.
Well, you got your deniers. When you have 97% of the climate scientists saying, here's the facts, and you got 3% deniers, are you going to believe that 3%? The analogy that I've used on many occasions is you have a very ill son, and you take him to 100 doctors, and 97 of them say, he's got to have this operation, or there's a fair chance he's going to expire. 3% say, nah, don't do it. I think you're going to do it. So you put it into that context, and not to overly dramatize the situation, but we're cooking the earth. We are cooking the earth, and that's just a proven fact. When we pump CO2 in the way we've been pumping in, and we're the number 2 polluter, number 1 is China. But the kicker is, we've all agreed to the Paris Accords now. I'd say all 130 countries. We need to adhere to those precepts. We need to stop dumping CO2 in the atmosphere and stop what's already started here. Now there's a momentum. It's kind of like a battleship. It's got some momentum to it, and unless we put a stop to this, that momentum is going to carry it for 5, I hope not 10 years, where it keeps going up, and then you've rounded the curve, it's going to go down. So I mean, there's some optimism. There's great optimism there, as a matter of fact.
I think the average person understands these issues when you put them into this type of context, and unlike other topics that are regional threats, this is one that is global and it's existential.
John, American Security Project founded on the precept that these issues all have a national security perspective to them. And so you go, what does that mean, national security? It means if we don't do something about it, our national security is going to be impacted. So then you have to draw that analogy. Climate change, come on, it's getting warmer, but it's not going to affect us here in the United States. And so this is a bit of a drawn-out answer, but I'm going to give you both perspectives. One is it's certainly going to affect you here in the United States, and we've seen the impacts, whether it's rising sea levels on all our coasts, our bases and stations are impacted. Norfolk Naval Station for sure. All at Parris Island, where I used to be the commanding general, The water level is rising. It's just a fact of the matter. And we've got to raise the piers at Norfolk Naval Station. Eglin Air Force Base in Florida, shut down several times last year due to floods. We got floods, we have droughts, we have forest fires, and then you've got the hottest years on record. So now migration of birds and insects and disease is going north. There's your immediate impact at continental United States. Let's expand this to be worldwide. Say, okay, I get that. This is not really a security issue, is it? Well, it is, and here's why. You think you have a migration problem now in Europe with what's happened in the Middle East. Wait 20, 30 years when you've got 20 or 30 million people in sub-Saharan Africa where the average daily temperature will be 140 to 150 degrees. They're not staying there. And they're not going south to South Africa either. They're going north, and they're going to the Mediterranean, and they're going to try to get to Europe. Europe is going to have a problem of absolutely immense proportion on its hands. So shift around a little bit more, going to Southeast Asia, and look at Bangladesh, where a 1.5-foot sea level rise is going to cause 20 to 30 million refugees. Now, John, the sad part about in this particular case is that ship I talked about, that Momentum, they're going to have a 1.5-foot level sea. We're at the juncture now. That part's not going to be stopped because of the melting of the ice caps. So they know 2030, 2040, they got to put 20 million people somewhere. And they're not going to India, armed border, much like the Berlin Wall, not going to Myanmar. Probably going to be boat people. And then you go, where are they going? Indonesia, largest Muslim country in the world, already has a terrorist problem. ISIS is already there, although not to the extent it is in other places. But it becomes a hotbed, or what we call an accelerant to instability. And it will be a huge accelerant in that particular area of operation. So we've got to be mindful of that. We've got forces positioned there, of course. You move a little bit farther to the east, look at the Philippines. Already had Typhoon Haiyan in 2012, 8,000 people killed. We were the first responder there. These are all affecting international and world stability, and will infect our forces that are stationed there.
So how do you sleep at night as you think about these things?
Well, that's a great question. Because here's how I sleep at night. Because there's a fair amount of us, national security type related people and retired military, who understand the national security perspective of this and can hopefully go out and preach the gospel, if you will, to the general public and say, hey, I'm not Republican, I'm not Democrat, I'm nonpartisan here, but there's a problem. And the climate change problem is solvable. I mean, that is solvable. And we know ways to do it. They've been working on it for a long time, but the Paris Accords and then Conference of Parties 21, which is Paris, 22, which is Marrakesh, which is going to fund this whole issue. The positive side is you got China, Russia, and 128 other countries who have signed up to this, who understand it and saying we need to reduce the CO2 and we got to bring down the level of temperature rise by at least 2 degrees centigrade in another, let's say, I think it was 20 years, by about 2025. So, I mean, that part, John, that gives me optimism that there's some movement here. All is not so dire that I can't sleep at night about this. But as I've told another audience, the future is not for me and you. The future is to our kids and our grandkids. And there's another part of optimism on my part that a lot of them are listening and they're understanding it in great places like the University of Central Florida, who brings in high school kids by the thousands to teach them about this type of issue. Is very important on the education side. So, and I used to be the commanding general at Parris Island, where we brought in 22,000 high school graduates, 99.9% diplomat high school graduates every year. To me, the best America has. These are young men and women who wanted to serve. I mean, that's why I'm optimistic.
Well, you mentioned the word solvable, and we know that's the case with climate change. We know that's the case with other big issues like human trafficking, some of the challenges we find in the Middle East. What is it going to take to put together that bipartisan consensus here and agreement in other countries? Because these are global issues. They're going to have to be decided not just by individual nations, but by the entire planet.
Yeah, hopefully you can try to take the partisanship out of it. What happens is, of course, when you have a presidential election, either side begins to pander to their base, whether it's Democrat or Republican, We saw that in the previous presidential election, and it gets very heated. The rhetoric comes on strong. Election's over. I mean, the next one is congressional 2018, then presidential 2020. So maybe we got a little bit of a respite here from the true political parts of it once we can get through the Trump administration's consistent publishing executive orders, and that will calm down. And because he's got his campaign promises, he's holding to them. Okay, that's the way it is. I mean, I'm not crying over spilt milk here. You've got to take them for what they're worth. That's what he said he was going to do. But then you go to the Hill, and where after the failure this past couple of months to repeal Obamacare, maybe there's a lesson there to Congress. Okay, let's work together. And I think I think it's resonating. It's got to resonate if they want to do something about health care. That's not really an ASP's bailiwick here, but nonetheless, I think there's some optimism on the Hill that they can work on all these issues, climate change being one of them, but energy security is another huge one in this country. The coal business, and I can talk for quite a while about my feelings about coal. So I will. I'll talk a minute about coal. And Vice President Pence has said the war on coal is over, and I think he's right, but not for the reason he thinks it's over. It's not over because the government went after coal with emissions restrictions and restricting mining and that whole business. It's over because solar and wind are overtaking them very quickly, and natural gas has just become the fossil fuel of choice now versus coal. And natural gas burns much more efficiently, it's much less a pollutant, and it's abundant because of the fracking business. Coal is being put out of the business by economics. I mean, it's just fact of the matter. I'm not a coal fan, as you could probably tell. I am sympathetic to the miners. Wouldn't it be nice if we could give them jobs in the renewable energy sector, which is possible. The renewable energy sector employs more people today than they did over the last year in oil, gas, and nuclear combined. 50% of the power that's produced in the Midwest today is produced by renewable energy, solar and wind. November of 2016, I think the date was November 17th, 45% of the power provided to the entire state of Texas was either by wind or solar. You don't hear those stats echoed too much, certainly by the current administration, but it's there. But who listens are the mayors, the governors, and the business people. They understand the economics of it, which you would think would attract the President of the United States, who's a business guy. So, okay, let's pitch the business side of this. True, from my perspective, we want the other side of it. What's it going to do for climate change and polluting the atmosphere and reducing that? But there's a business side to it that's very positive.
Yeah, we could spend our whole time talking about energy and climate change, but let's move on to a couple of other topics, one of which I think is also solvable. This is the crisis on the Korean Peninsula. It's a crisis that's been brewing for a long time, and now everyone seems to be running around with their hands in the air wondering what can we do, because we don't have influence. The Chinese don't have as much influence as we thought they had, perhaps. What's the solution here? Do we just wait until this individual develops the capability in terms of ICBMs and nuclear weapons to land one on us?
I have to provide a couple of anecdotal stories here. And it goes back to 1984, I would say, when I was a young major serving in Okinawa, and we'd go to Korea for an exercise called Team Spirit. And we'd go to an underground bunker, which is still there, called CP Tango, north of Seoul, not far from the DMZ. And we'd have an exercise recreating the potential attack from the north to the south. 84 now, 84. And no nuclear weapons. They didn't have nukes then. They weren't even going for them then. But nonetheless, it's still a declared state of war. And me being then from the 3rd Marine Amphibious Force, we're direly concerned about a potential escalation of activities between the North and the South. This was without nuclear weapons. This is 1984. Move forward to 1992, I've moved up a couple of ranks. I'm working in the office of the Secretary of Defense as a colonel, and I have a friend who's down in what's called J2 intelligence in the Joint Staff, who would not routinely, but occasionally run up to me and go, my God, they're going crazy. They're going to light off a nuclear weapon. The North is going to attack the South. This is 1992. Before they had a nuke that was proven, Everybody was lighting their hair on fire, but saner minds prevailed and said, not so fast. And frankly, that's the way I took it. I said, no, all the warnings and indicators, they call them, don't show an imminent attack here. Let's not light the flare and go over the DMZ. We don't want another world war potentially on our hands between us and China. So now, fast forward another decade, they start to develop nuclear weapons, and then a decade beyond that to today, where they have nuclear weapons. We know they've got them. They've not been able to miniaturize them to the point where they can put it on a ballistic missile, nor do they yet have a ballistic missile. But I guess to cut to the chase on this, John, is patience is a virtue here. Nobody should get an itchy finger about any of this kind of stuff. That to kind of go to what you said, do we just sit back and wait? No. You try as much as you can on the sanctions side of the house. China has to be really, really worried. They're in a unique position here. They don't like the fact that they've got other nuclear weapons now on their border. But they also aren't going to like the fact if, for some reason, there's an attack and the United States supports South Korea and takes over North Korea. So they're in a very odd situation. We know that a lot of the financial support from North Korea is coming from China. I mean, it's a fact. Put the squeeze on them, put the squeeze on their banks, sanction, and I know everybody's been saying sanctions for a long time, but sanctions had an effect on Iran with the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, so that they can have an effect here. And my personal opinion is, coming from a military frame of mind and having been to that DMZ, it's better to go the whole diplomatic route here and you exercise as much caution as you can and don't get an itchy trigger finger here, because one small mistake could turn the world into conflagration. They could light a nuke and send it to Seoul, Korea. Seoul, Korea is within artillery distance of North Korea, not just nuclear, conventional weapon. They could almost wipe out Seoul without a nuclear weapon. We don't want that to happen, to say the least. So it's going to take a lot of caution, and despite the rhetoric and all the my hair's on fire. And my last point on this is, everybody says Kim Jong-un is he's a madman. He just goes, he's crazy. He says all these words, and sticks and stones will break my bones. Words will never hurt me. He can say what he wants, but he's not a madman. He's not a madman because I think obviously he realizes he's got a nuke weapon. And we are not going after him right now just because he has a nuclear weapon. I mean, that's okay. You got it tucked into a mountain. We know where it is. It would mean more than mutually assured. It would be just not mutual. We wouldn't get destroyed. He would get destroyed if he did anything with it. I think he knows that. He understands that. Is that going to cause him to get rid of his nuclear weapon? I don't think so. He views that as his insurance policy. Can we stop him from miniaturizing that, putting on a ballistic missile and aiming for Los Angeles? Different story. And if it ever gets to that hard of a point, and John, I just don't see that happening in the near term. He might talk about it. He might do his missile launches and missile tests, and we positioned THAAD, anti-air defense, there, which China is not happy about. But it's a situation that calmer heads have to prevail.
But in the case of China today, its interests on the peninsula overlap more with ours than they do with North Korea's. They have this ideological connection. They have this historical connection. As you said, they're the sole country really supporting this regime. Without China's help, the North Korean government would collapse fairly quickly, even though it's resilient and self-reliant and all of that. I mean, it can't just keep existing on nothing with a shrinking economy and everything else. But wouldn't it be in China's interest to help advance the conversation in a way that would encourage North Korea to be a better citizen, if you will?
Yes, to answer your question, I would hope so.
And I would hope that we're having these kinds of conversations privately with the Chinese, even if we're not having them publicly.
I am not on the inside of this loop. I'm not divulging any classified information here. I just don't know. I would surmise, yes, that's certainly the case. That another level or two down, people are running down the diplomatic side and saying just what you said. Hey, you've got a huge vested interest here, certainly with us. We don't want to kill the economy between China and the United States. I mean, the number one debtor nation here with China. But that could happen. I think that's a card we're just not going to play unless it's really a dire world situation where we think he's miniaturized, put it on a weapon, going to do it in China. We don't want to go in there, but you got to do something to stop this. And maybe deep down that's the Trump card. Well, shouldn't use that word. But maybe it is. Mm-hmm. When you get down to the bottom line, is we're going to do everything in our possible power to go to them and say, look, you know what our potential is militarily. I mean, we're all powerful. North Korea would squash them like a bug, but they could make it really, really nasty. And we do not want that to happen. Help us.
Absolutely. Well, let's go to another. We obviously don't have time to touch on all of them, but let's talk about Europe for a bit. We've got most of the countries now working together in security and economic alliances, but still jitters, especially in Eastern Europe, about what Russia's intentions are. We've seen what Russia can do in Georgia and Ukraine. Is there something brewing here that we're not paying attention to, or
no,
is it all?
The Crimea thing was not totally anticipated nor handled well, in my opinion, nor Ukraine, for that matter. We go a little soft on Putin on the Ukraine business. The Helsinki Accord was they got rid of their nuclear weapons and we will protect you. Well, did we do that? Not exactly. So now it's into turmoil because Putin said Crimea is mine. It is now, and we still have instability in eastern Ukraine. That's problematic. I mean, there's a problem. There's a trouble with that, and Ukrainians obviously are hugely threatened. And we can talk about gray zone and men in little green suits running around, which are Russians. John, that potential is huge, and of course Ukraine is not going to join NATO. I mean, if they did, Russia would. That would be the trigger that would launch a big problem. So they know better than do that. But I think our promises to Ukraine, are we going to help you? Would it be better if we provided them weapons? My opinion is yes, we ought to. I think we've got to be careful with NATO in Article 5. Of course, we're going to defend anybody under NATO Article 5 rules who's a member of NATO. Montenegro was admitted to NATO here in just the recent past. That threatens Russia. They think, oh my God, here they go again, and they're thinking Ukraine. So I'm not defending Putin or anything he did, but there's a balance to this. We have moved forces now, U.S. forces, into Poland. We are beefing up NATO. The Trump administration has gone after NATO, saying, pay up. You need to pay 2% of your GDP to support your own defense establishment. They do. That's the rule. That's the law. We pay attention to it. Some do, some don't. It's a nervous situation. And, John, where it really gets nervous is when Putin starts talking nuclear weapons. And I'm going to move a nuclear weapon around or have an intercontinental ballistic missile that I'm moving up the border, which violates the INF Treaty. That you really have to respond to that type of provocation, not with armed force, but with heavy diplomatic pressure here. So, I mean, it's another one that, yes, what happened in Crimea and Ukraine is a big problem. I think we want NATO support and we want to help them out, but you got to be careful.
Do you feel that we understand the Russians and the Russians understand us? I know this is a big question, short answer because we're short on time, but just quick response to that.
Definition we, meaning our government. I mean, we've got enough great experts in the Department of State who clearly understand the motivation of the Russians, have lived there for years, or Russian experts who have followed them for decades. So I think we do, but maybe not totally. Putin, in my opinion, has turned out to be another dictator there. He does his best to divert his country's attention from their economic crisis, which is huge, onto other events, like saying the United States is pressuring us, they're harming our borders here. The Arctic, and we didn't even get into the Arctic here, but he said, oh, we're going to rebuild the Arctic because they're coming in the Arctic. He's an expert at this, an expert at it. And of course, it's not the beauty of it, but he's dictator for life, basically, so he can get away with that kind of stuff, whereas we don't have a government that can do anything remotely close, nor would we. But so I think we do understand it, and I think he understands us better than you would think.
Well, on that, since we're out of time, I'll thank you for joining us today, Steve. Appreciate it.
John, it's been my pleasure.
And thank you. For Global Perspectives, I'm John Bercia. We'll see you next time.